Someone woke up with an attitude.
Cancel culture is cancelled.
You know what woke means? It means you're a loser.
Why do you think you haven't been cancelled yet? I don't know. What's being cancelled?
Wake up.
Welcome back for another episode of the Woke What Cancel This podcast, where we speak our mind. Yep, that's right. We give you our 2 cents. You decide what you want to do with it after that. It doesn't matter. You can like it, you can love it, you can hate it. But hopefully you learn from it. And one of the cool parts about living in the U.S. is that we have the freedom of speech. We have the freedom of expression, and that's exactly what we do on this podcast. Podcast is based on 2 things: opinion and fact. We make a nice tight mix of the 2 of them. You decide what you want to take away from it. Like I said, do the research. All the information that we provide to you on these podcasts can be found on the internet. So last month, economists predicted in a preliminary estimate that California's reparations could cost the state over $800 billion. So let's break it down for you. Basically, what is a reparation? Well, reparations are the act or process of making amends for a wrong. According to the United Nations, adequate, effective, and prompt reparation is intended to promote justice by redressing gross violations of international human rights law or serious violations of international humanitarian law. Here are my thoughts on this. If we go down this road and we say, okay, approximately 1.8 million black Californians who had an ancestor enslaved in the U.S. should be getting a reparation because of that. Do we really believe that this is the best thing to do? California is already going down the crapper. People are leaving the state because of crime and all this other stuff, but they want to take a moment out to go back in history and say, okay, you're the descendant of a slave, so you know what? We're going to pay you all of this money, last time I knew, like $1.2 million, because your ancestors were slaves. Okay, number one, wasn't it not too long ago that people decided it was easier to erase history because it hurt people? So what did we do? We got rid of Confederate statues. We got rid of monuments. We changed the names to colleges because it hurt us. It was part of our past. It was part of history that people wanted to forget. So why can't we forget about slavery? It's a fact. It happened. It's a piece of history. Are we proud of it? No. Maybe there are some people out there that are proud of it. But you know what? There is not one single slave in the U.S. right now. So why do all of these people in California think the best thing to do is to award people that are living today that were never slaves and have never been slaves $1.2 million because somebody in their family so many years ago was a slave? It was a piece of history. The only thing that I honestly think this has anything to do with is the fact that people are greedy. They want a handout. They think they're entitled to it. I really don't know how to explain this, and I don't know how to be any clearer than the fact we live in a world of nothing but entitlement. Everybody believes they are entitled to one thing or another. Some people just choose to act on it a little bit more than others. Now, let's look at this, all right? My father was in the Vietnam War. If you haven't found what Agent Orange is, if you have no idea what this defoliant is, look it up on the internet, because so many of our Vietnam veterans were sprayed with this defoliant made by Dow Chemicals. Our government knew all about it. It's okay for the soldiers because they were able to get a little bit of help. But you know what? I had to go through testing when I was a kid, because there are links between Agent Orange and birth defects from Vietnam veteran offspring, which I have a lot of them. My mother, she tried to do all she could. She tried to fight it, just to get a little bit of money out of the government, because all of my medical bills from the past years and medical bills that I continue to get as I get older. But the United States government looks at this and says, oh, wait a minute, there's no correlation between the Vietnam veteran offspring and Agent Orange and birth defects. There are a few. If I had spina bifida, yeah, I could get some money from the government. So I take offense to the whole fact that California wants to give $1.2 million to its 1.8 million black residents. Of course, you got to meet the criteria. Evidently, if you're a descendant of a slave, that's all well and fine. You get it. So basically, here's the thing. California Governor Newsom is actually declining to back reparations checks, saying slavery's legacy is more than cash payment. So when I first started recording this podcast, we were all under the assumption that, you know what, these people in California are going to get the $1.2 million. So now he's basically backtracking a little bit and saying, you know what, yes, this is what they suggest we do, but I don't really know if I'm going to sign it into law. I don't know if I'm going to agree with it, because there may be other ways that we can actually get the point across without handing people all of this money. And honestly, to tell you the truth, I think it's really good news, because the task force, which, by the way, that he created, breaks down payments by types of historical discrimination. For instance, black residents affected by redlining by banks would receive $3,366 for each year they lived in California from the early 1930s to the 1970s. That amounts up to $148,099. Also, black residents could receive roughly $2,352 in compensation for over-policing and mass incarceration for each year they lived in California between 1970 and 2020. Now, those payments could amount to $115,260. For a black Californian who checks enough boxes, the total payout could reach $1.2 million. But now he's saying, I don't know if I want to go this way, because you know what? That may create just a little bit of turmoil. You think, dude? Of course, then again, Democrats always promise all of this money, all of these good things, and they think it's the catch-all, the solution to the problem. Look at Joe Biden. It's going to bankrupt California. I mean, let's face it, the state isn't doing that great right now. They are making strides to become the worst state in the entire United States. People are fleeing them. It's a whole Democratic thing. It is, because Democrats believe that handouts should be given to everybody out there. And you know what? They'll do anything to buy a vote. Why do you think we have open borders? Title 42 is going to be ending. Bring them on over. We'll give them money. We'll give them everything. Same thing for this. You know what? I'm sorry that slavery happened. I'm sorry that you are a descendant of a slave. But no, that does not give you a right to $1.2 million. The state is not your baby daddy. Work for the frickin' money. And I'm going to say this like I do every single podcast, because, yes, this could be construed as a bitch session, and that's all up to you if you guys want to believe it or not. Honestly, to tell you the truth, come on. You guys want to erase history, but then you come back and say, oh, wait a minute, if it benefits me, that's okay. We're going to keep it on the table. We're going to keep this whole thing on the table and say, you know what? Oh, if I can get $1.2 million. So what do you think's going to happen? Do you think that people are going to stay in California if they get $1.2 million? Hell no. They're going to say, thanks for the money. I'm leaving the state. Because let's face it, you give $1.2 million to anybody, it's not going to last that long. Now, the other thing is, it's unclear how California is going to pay for the large-scale reparations. Newsom announced back in January that the state faces a projected budget deficit of $22.5 billion, that's with a B, for the coming fiscal year. Then weeks later, the California Legislative Analyst Office, which is a government agency that analyzes the budget for the state legislator, estimated in a subsequent report that Newsom's forecast undershot the mark by about $7 billion, just like Joe Biden. Why is Joe Biden doing all of this stuff? College loan handouts and everything else in between? He wants to buy the vote. He wants people to like him. And what better way for people to like you than giving you things for free? It's crazy. The idea of reparations for slavery, it's not a new idea. Before the Civil War actually ended, General William Tecumseh Sherman issued an order in South Carolina. He wanted 40 acres and the loan of an army mule set aside for each former slave family. Well, that order never carried out, and after the war, radical Republicans in Congress passed laws requiring confiscation of former Confederate property to provide the ex-slaves with 40 acres and a mule. In 1866, President Andrew Johnson vetoed the legislation. The next push for reparations took place at the turn of the century. Several black organizations lobbied Congress to provide pensions for former slaves and their children. One bill introduced into the U.S. Senate in 1894 would have granted direct payments of up to $500 to all ex-slaves, plus monthly pensions ranging from $4 to $15. Of course, a lot of this never happened. But here's the difference. Back then, we had slaves. We had slavery. It was still going on. Today, we do not. You see the difference? You see the difference? So again, come on. There are no black slaves living today. And I will tell you that if you're black, if you're female, if you're Asian, Mexican, whatever, it doesn't matter. You can make your life so much better. You have the power. It doesn't matter. In this day and age, you can do it. You don't need $1.2 million. You don't need to be black. You don't need to be white. You don't need to be Asian. You need to be human. That's what you need to look at for this. And honestly, to tell you the truth, I'm a little pissed off that a governor would even allow something like this to happen. It doesn't make any sense to me. Now, a final report with the panel's official recommendations is due by July 1st to the California legislature, which will then decide whether to implement the measures and send them to Governor Gavin Newsom's desk to be signed into law. He signed the bill, creating the task force basically to help the unrest following the 2020 murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. He took that as if to say, I am your boogeyman. I am going to take you. I am going to help you. I am going to cradle you. I am going to give you reparations. If you can get away with this in a place like California, then why can't we get reparations for being children of Vietnam veterans? And since we're going through all of these birth defects, why can't something like that happen? Where's the Calvary for the rest of the people in America? What about all of our homeless? What about all of our vets that are sitting on the sidewalks because they have no home? I would damn well be taking care of these guys that fought for our freedom before I gave a handout to a bunch of people that really could care less. All they do is bitch, gripe, and complain. No. Again, I'm going to tell you, I am not racist. I don't care what creed, color, origin, anything. I don't care what sex you are. It doesn't matter. We're all humans. But you know what? Emphasis is being put on one group, just like we had our last podcast with trans and everything else in between. I'm so tired of everything being put on one group, like black people or trans or gay or whatever. Why can't everybody just be taken care of as human beings? Why do we have to have such a big issue with one group of people, and then the rest of us just sit there and float by, and we're like, really? I feel like the old lady from the Wendy's commercials. Where's the beef? We're still struggling every year with taxes, food prices, and everything else in between. But you want to give so many black residents $1.2 million just because they're descendants of slavery. Anybody else see a problem with that? I don't understand it. I really, really don't understand it. So when you break it down, federal and state governments have already spent billions of dollars on social programs such as welfare, subsidized housing, healthcare, employment development, affirmative action, education. All of these programs benefited African Americans. And African Americans, particularly the young, need to overcome their problems through their own efforts and not depend on more government handouts and benefits. You have the power. You have the control. The money's not going to help you out. It will to a point, but it's not going to solve all of your problems. Then what's going to happen when you burn through that $1.2 million? Do you think anything's going to change after that? No, the government's not going to give you any more money. So get your asses up, go find a job, and quit crying, woe is me, because you're not a slave. You're a slave to the system. You're not a slave to humanity. You have the ability to get out there and do good. And reparations? They'd be way too expensive, depriving the country of the opportunity to fix Social Security and Medicare and meet other budget needs that benefit all Americans. All of that money that would be going to pay reparations for every black person in the USA would basically make the states go bottom up. They're trying to find the money right now. And then, of course, with the ending of Title 42 and the influx of immigrants coming into the U.S., where's the money going to come to take care of them? Dear God. Also, any reparation plan would lead to unfairness and huge, huge administrative cost. Who would receive reparations? Descendants of slaves? All black people? Would well-off African Americans receive payments? If a fund were set up, who would administer it? Would those unhappy with the plan call for even more reparations or file lawsuits because they want more money? They feel entitled. They want more than $1.2 million. I was reading a story not too long ago that said, oh, wait a minute, $1.2 million is not enough. We need at least $200 million for each person. Are you freaking serious? Are you that friggin' greedy? And then you look at half of the people on the council that are doing this, and they're black anyway, so they're going to vote for it. They're going to vote for more money because, let's face it, they think they're entitled. And this is the way of the world right now. We live in a world of entitled brats. It's easier to complain, bitch and moan and whine to get your own way than it is to solve the problems on your own. It's sad. It really is. So the task force in California, by the way, approved a public apology acknowledging the state's responsibility for past wrongs and promising the state will not repeat them. Oh, good. So California is not going to fall back into slavery. I'm happy about that. It would be issued in the presence of people whose ancestors were enslaved, but no more. So you know what's going to happen? They're going to go out, they're going to give all this money to people that were descendants of slaves, and then you're going to have all these other black people over here on the side saying, where's my money? Where's my money, fool? I want my money. Give me my money. And then next thing you know, there's going to be more crime because you've got this group that has money, this group over here that doesn't have any money, and then you got a little group of people in there saying, oh yeah, I have just enough to get by. You know what? We're going to rob you. We're going to rob you because that money should be ours. And that's what's going to happen. Turmoil. California had actually previously apologized for placing Japanese Americans in internment camps during World War II and for violence against and mistreatment of Native Americans. So there's another thing. What about all of the Native Americans who we stole land from and killed their family members because us white folks came over here? They were here first, but we come over, got off at Plymouth Rock, worked our way right on through and said, you know what? Your land is our land. Here you go. We're going to scalp you. And we're going to take your property. We're going to take your food. We're going to push you off of your land because That's what we do. So do we also give the money to Native Americans because of the problems they have? What about the Japanese Americans for placing them in internment camps? You can see the way this is going to go. This is going to snowball because once you do it for one particular group of people, the other ones are going to fall in line. The other ones are going to be there with their greedy little paws out saying, where's my slice of heaven? Where's my payment for all the wrongs that were done me? I love it. Would I love a little extra money from the government, for the stuff that I went through because of Agent Orange? You bet your ass. And I've fought for it. I've got a hold of the White House. I shared my issue. And you know what I was told by President Biden? Oh, I'm working on that. Maybe someday we'll get the money. Really? Okay. So let's open the border. Let's continue to let all of these migrants come in. But again, we don't have the money to take care of our own people. So here's what I have to say to Gavin Newsom and this panel out in California. You guys are going down a slippery slope. No, reparations do not need to be paid to 1.8 million black people. Issue an apology. We've already apologized. We can't go back and change it. So why do we want to alter things now? Just because you want to make somebody your friend? Giving somebody money, especially that kind of money, isn't going to make them your friend. You're going to be their bitch for a little while. And then you know what? They're going to wash their hands, they're going to turn away from you, and they're going to go on. Just like the same thing with the immigration. All of these people coming in the U.S., Joe Biden thinks, oh, hey, they're going to vote Democrat because we allowed them in. Even a lot of the immigrants aren't too happy with what's going on in the U.S. But you know what? It's better than where they're coming from. So why don't we send a lot of these people down to Mexico and see what life is like down there for them, and then have them come back here and see what their thoughts are on these reparations then. Maybe you ought to be happy that you're living in the U.S. Maybe you should stop wanting a greedy handout. Maybe you need to start working for it. There are a lot of jobs out there. Go out, get one. Stop being so damn entitled. The world does not owe you a damn thing. Get up, work for it, make something for yourself. Then you will find the satisfaction you've been looking for. My bitch session is done and over with today. We've been talking about the reparations out in California. Like I said, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this. But you know what? You get who you voted for. And if this happens and California crumbles, maybe, just maybe, the rest of the United States will learn. But then again, I don't know. People are real stupid nowadays. So they're going to look at it and say, oh, we can do that. Just like the whole electric car thing and everything else in between. The world is heading for disaster. So if we don't nip this in the bud right now, we're going to lose our ability to do so. Life isn't a big handout. You got to work for it. You've been listening to the Woke What Cancel This podcast. My name is Al Lockwood. Don't forget, find us on Facebook and YouTube. All one word, Woke What Cancel This. Search for it right now. The views are based on my opinion only. They are based on facts. Again, you can find everything by simply Googling it on the internet. If you would like to be a guest on the Woke What Cancel This podcast, email me, WokeWhatCancelThis@yahoo.com. Till next time.